This chapter, Mr. Basketball, the story of George Mikan. Basketball, a game of giants. And there's number 99, George Mikan, one of the greatest. He set most of the game's scoring records, and his fighting spirit carried his teams to victory. But Mikan's road to the top was hard. To him, greatness came only after years of confusion and misery. The story begins at Joliet, Illinois, where Mikan was born in 1924. His parents ran a tavern. Living quarters were in the rear. George's mother in those days didn't dream he'd grow up to bring glory to the family. Young Mikan's troubles began at grade school, St. Mary's, Parochial. The other boys refused to play with him, called him a human beanpole because he was so tall. One year, George won the City Marbles Championship, but even that was spoiled. Because of his height, some people thought he'd lied about his age. And at Joliet Catholic High School, it was the same sad tale. George was 13 years old and almost 6.5 feet tall. The teachers did their best to help the unhappy boy, but he went out for basketball and the other boys called him a freak. He didn't make the team, too clumsy. In desperation, George decided to become a priest, entering Quigley Seminary. There, a teacher advised against it. Priesthood, he said, was no calling for a man running away from himself. So George transferred to DePaul University. His new goal, to become a lawyer. In the university library, George saw DePaul's basketball trophy. He'd always loved the game. It was a game in which height was an asset. That year, George went out for freshman basketball and made the team. Next year, he was a member of the varsity. Fewer taunts now about his height, but there was still plenty of misery in store for George Mikan. The Second World War. George reported eagerly for induction. He wanted to serve his country, but he was turned down. Too tall. The blackest period of his life followed that rejection. Then, fortunately, two things happened. George met and fell in love with a girl he later married, Patricia Dabney. And in Coach Ray Meyer, he found a friend. Friendship and love, they made all the difference in the world. On the basketball court, the change in Mikan was quickly noticeable. The big fella had more confidence in himself. He kept opposing teams busy defending their basket, most often without success. Led by Big George, the DePaul team began going places. Almost overnight, they became contenders for the national crown. In 1945, they won the National Invitation Tournament. Mikan and his teammates were sensational. Big George's name was constantly in the newspapers. In 1948, George Mikan joined the Minneapolis Lakers, a star-studded professional team. Owner Ben Berger, on the left, had spent a fortune to bring together outstanding professional players from all over the country. His coaching staff was first-rate. Berger paid his men well, but he insisted on results. He wanted the professional basketball championship. In practice sessions, Mikan showed his stuff. But he was only one star among many. He'd come to the Lakers with a brilliant college record. But would it shine as brightly among these veterans? It was Mycan's big chance. He had to make good. With the professional Minneapolis Lakers, George Mikan lived up to his reputation as a great college player. In points scored, he led the league. But the opposition was winning too often, and owner Berger was displeased. The reason was Mikan. He was playing a lone wolf game, hurting the Lakers' teamwork. They racked up points, all right, but it was every man for himself. Timeout, and the coach laid down the law. Basketball is a team game. It did no good. The opposition went on scoring. Head coach Johnny Kundla tried everything. In practice sessions, the Minneapolis Lakers went back to the fundamentals of basketball to build up the team spirit that was lacking. They worked hours at the basket, sharpening their shots. Johnny Kundla created a number of new plays that revolved around Mikan. Plays that utilized Mikan's great height and skill. They were team plays in which George was to function like the key gear in a machine. You've got to cooperate, said Kundla. While the coach spoke on, explaining the new plays, Mikan was thinking hard. Suddenly it was all clear. Kundla was right. George saw that he had tried too hard to star. He had been too anxious to make a good impression on the fans and chose the wrong way. Buckling down to work with the team, Big George resolved to do better. No more lone wolf stuff. Mikan had learned his lesson. Then drill and more drill until the new plays were letter perfect. Now there was a new spirit among the Minneapolis Lakers. They had overcome their crisis. Welded together finally in team spirit, they were ready to meet the competition. Off they went, touring the professional basketball circuit. George Mikan became a favorite among players and fans. Led by him, the Lakers trimmed the opposition, entered the National League playoffs, and won the title. Rochester was beaten. Oshkosh was trounced. Tri-Cities was defeated. Now it was 1950, and the Lakers were on their way to Chicago. The best team in professional basketball, they were pitted against the college all-stars, best of the amateurs. A huge audience for that court classic, drawn there most of all by the towering figure of George Mikan. By now, he was known as Mr. Basketball, the greatest player in the game, and it was easy to see why he was rated tops. The giant could move with the speed of a lightweight. When he had to, he knew all the tricks. And when it came to scoring points, he was in a class by himself. With flawless team play, he constantly helped his teammates to score. Intermission, time for a well-earned rest, and some words of advice from Coach Johnny Kundla. He didn't have to give many pointers to George Mikan. He knew his job. During the second half, with brilliant defensive play, he demonstrated the difference between amateurs and great professionals. Kundla and Berger were thrilled as he led the team to victory. On to Madison Square Garden, New York, and a game with the Knickerbockers. It wasn't the big fellow's first appearance in the Garden. Far from it. He had played there often as an amateur and professional, but it was a game in which George Mikan showed the courage of a true champion. He was on a scoring rampage that night, thrilling the crowd with his shots. and then suddenly he fell to the floor. He had fallen hard and lay in a daze of pain. A few moments later, he struggled to his feet. But could he go on? He did. Controlling his jangled nerves and aching muscles, he sank his foul shot. The game went on, and Big George went on scoring. No wonder he was voted the player of the half-century. George Mikan had come a long, long way from the gloomy years of his childhood. Now he had a happy family life, and his ambition to become a lawyer was finally achieved. He had sons of his own, and he had learned the secret of self-fulfillment. Never surrender to self-pity. Make the most of what you have and are. George Mikan had found in himself enough to make him Mr. Basketball.